Daniel stepped off the shuttle and felt the cool air of Lunara Prime brush against his skin. The colony world was unlike Earth in many ways. The sky had a violet tint and 2 pale moons floated above even during the day. Strange plants with glowing petals lined the streets, giving the place a dreamlike atmosphere. For a moment, Daniel simply stood there staring, his suitcase in one hand and a bag over his shoulder. He had come here for a new beginning. Earth had grown too noisy, too crowded, and too fast for him. He had wanted a quiet place, a place where he could think, breathe, and maybe even discover something new about himself. Lunara Prime, with its small human colony and untouched wildlands, seemed perfect. Daniel's new house was at the edge of the settlement, where the colony buildings met the strange alien forest. The home itself looked simple, a small white structure built with local stone and reinforced glass. It had a round roof and wide windows to let in the soft violet light. Inside, it was clean and mostly empty, waiting for him to make it his own. As he unpacked, he felt both excitement and unease. He was truly far away from Earth, and his neighbors here were not only human. The colony was mixed, with a few alien settlers allowed to live among them. Daniel had heard stories, some filled with curiosity, others filled with warnings. But he had promised himself he would judge no one before meeting them. That evening, Daniel walked outside to watch the sunset. On Lunara Prime, the sunset was not red or gold like on Earth. Instead, the sky shifted to shades of silver and blue, with the glowing plants in the forest beginning to shine brighter. It was beautiful, almost magical. Then he noticed her. Across the street stood a tall figure. She was dressed in a flowing dark robe that shimmered slightly under the strange light. Her skin was pale, almost glowing in the dusk, and her hair was long and silver. Her eyes were the most unusual, large, bright, and a deep shade of silver blue. She stood silently for a moment, watching him with a calm expression, and then she smiled. "Good evening," she said, her voice soft but clear. "You must be the new settler." Daniel nodded quickly, a little startled by her sudden appearance. "Yes, I just arrived today. I'm Daniel." The woman walked closer, moving gracefully, almost too smoothly for a human. "I am Solara," she introduced herself. "Your neighbor." Daniel tried to act normal, though he couldn't help noticing how unusual she seemed. There was something timeless about her, something that made her look as though she did not quite belong to the same world as the rest of the colony. Still, her smile was kind and her tone polite. "Welcome to Lunara Prime," she said. "If you need help settling in, do not hesitate to ask. Moving to a new world can be overwhelming." "Thank you," Daniel replied, feeling both relieved and curious. "It already feels very different from Earth. Beautiful but strange." Solara tilted her head slightly as though studying him. "Yes, Lunara Prime is beautiful, though it requires patience to understand. Many humans rush to change it. Few stop to listen to it." Her words struck him as thoughtful. Daniel smiled politely, though he wasn't sure what she meant. Then Solara surprised him. "Perhaps you would like to visit my home tomorrow evening. I enjoy learning about new neighbors. And," she added with a faint smile, "I have always been curious about humans." Daniel hesitated. Something about her invitation made him both excited and uneasy. He had only just arrived, and already his alien neighbor was inviting him into her home. But her expression was open and sincere, not threatening. "That sounds nice," Daniel finally said. "I'd like that." Solara nodded slowly, her silver eyes reflecting the faint glow of the plants around them. "Tomorrow, then, I will prepare something special." With that, she gave a graceful bow of her head and turned to walk back to her home. Daniel watched her leave. Her house stood a little apart from the others, near the edge of the glowing forest. Its walls looked different from the human houses, made of tall, crystalline structures that caught the moonlight and shimmered faintly. It looked both strange and beautiful, like something from a dream. As he returned to his own home, Daniel felt a mix of emotions. He had hoped for adventure when he moved to Lunara Prime, but he had not expected it to begin so soon. Who was Solara, really? She seemed kind, but there was a mystery about her that he couldn't ignore. That night, Daniel lay in bed, unable to sleep. The twin moons shone brightly through his window, casting silver light across the room. He thought about Solara's eyes, about the way she had spoken of patience and listening, and about her unusual house. He had heard rumors before coming here. Some colonists whispered about alien species that lived in the shadows. beings who thrived under the moons and preferred the night to the day. Some called them Watchers. Others gave them old names from human legends. Daniel had dismissed such talk as fear and superstition, but now, with Solara's image in his mind, he wasn't so sure. The next morning, Daniel tried to distract himself by arranging his home. He set up his small desk by the window, unpacked books, and placed a picture of Earth's ocean on the wall. Yet his thoughts kept drifting back to Solara. He stepped outside again during the day, hoping to see her, but her home looked quiet, almost asleep. The crystalline wall shimmered faintly in the sunlight, but no one came out. Perhaps, Daniel thought, she preferred the night. As evening approached, Daniel grew nervous. He wondered if he should bring something as a gift. On Earth, visiting a neighbor for the first time often meant carrying something small like food or flowers. But what gift would be proper for an alien neighbor? In the end, he carried a small book of Earth poems. It was simple, but perhaps she would enjoy it. When the moons rose, Daniel walked to Solara's house. The closer he came, the more unusual it seemed. The crystalline walls glowed faintly, and the air around the house felt cooler, almost refreshing. The door opened silently before he even knocked, as if the house itself had sensed him. Solara appeared, dressed in a different robe this time, dark blue with silver threads. Her smile was calm, her silver eyes bright. "Welcome, Daniel," she said softly. "Please come inside." Daniel stepped in and his eyes widened. The interior of the house was breathtaking. The walls glowed gently and strange lights floated in the air like tiny stars. The furniture seemed to grow out of the floor itself, shaped from smooth crystal that pulsed faintly with light. The air smelled faintly of flowers, though no plants were visible. Daniel handed her the small book nervously. "It's a gift. From Earth. Poems." Solara took it carefully, running her long fingers over the cover. "How thoughtful," she said with genuine warmth. "Thank you. I will treasure this." She guided him to a seat, and a low table formed from the floor itself. A moment later, 2 cups appeared, filled with a glowing blue drink. "Try it," Solara encouraged. "It is a local nectar, sweet and harmless for humans." Daniel lifted the cup carefully and took a sip. It was sweet, cool, and refreshing, with a taste he could not compare to anything from Earth. He smiled. "It's good." Solara smiled in return, her eyes watching him closely as though studying every reaction. They began to talk. Solara asked him about Earth, about oceans, forests, and human traditions. She listened intently as though each word mattered. Daniel, in turn, asked about Lunara Prime. She spoke of the moons, of the living forests, and of the old history of her people. As the evening went on, Daniel began to feel at ease. Her presence, though mysterious, was not frightening. Instead, it was calm, thoughtful, and even comforting. Yet deep inside, he knew there was more to her than she revealed. When he finally returned home that night, Daniel felt both tired and restless. He had stepped into a world far stranger than he had imagined, and he sensed his life on Lunara Prime was going to be anything but ordinary. And as he lay in bed, looking once again at the twin moons, he whispered to himself, "What have I gotten into?" The evening air of Lunara Prime was calm when Daniel walked across the glowing street to Solara's home. The 2 moons had just risen, and their light fell softly over the colony. The glowing plants near the forest gave the whole area an almost dreamlike look, and Daniel felt a mix of curiosity and nervousness. He was about to step into a place no human he knew had ever visited before. Solara greeted him at the doorway, dressed in a robe of dark silver that shimmered faintly. Her silver blue eyes caught the light of the moons, making them look brighter than ever. She smiled warmly. "Welcome, Daniel," she said softly. "I am glad you came." Daniel nodded politely, trying not to show his nervousness. "Thank you for inviting me." She stepped aside, and the door opened wider on its own, as though the house responded to her presence. Daniel entered and felt his breath catch. The inside of the house was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls were smooth crystal that glowed faintly, giving off soft light without any lamps. The floor felt warm under his feet, even through his boots, as though it had its own energy. Strange shapes grew naturally from the walls, chairs, tables, and shelves that looked grown rather than built. Some glowed faintly with a living pulse, like the beat of a heart. "This is amazing," Daniel whispered. Solara smiled slightly. "My people shape our homes to live with us, not apart from us. The crystals grow and bend as we guide them. They become part of us, and we become part of them. Daniel reached out and touched one of the walls. It was cool and smooth, but he thought he felt a faint vibration, like it was alive. He pulled his hand back, unsure. On Earth, houses are built from wood, stone, or metal. They don't feel alive like this. Perhaps that is why humans sometimes feel restless, Solara said, her voice calm. You are surrounded by silent walls instead of living companions. Daniel thought about that but did not answer. He followed her deeper into the house. The hallway opened into a wide chamber filled with soft light. The ceiling rose high, shaped like a dome, and tiny lights floated gently in the air like glowing fireflies. They drifted slowly, giving the room a peaceful, magical feeling. A table had already formed in the center, low and made of smooth, shining crystal. 2 seats grew beside it, shaped perfectly for comfort. Solara gestured for him to sit. Daniel sat down carefully, and the seat felt soft even though it looked like solid crystal. It adjusted slightly to his weight, holding him gently as though it had been made just for him. Solara moved gracefully, her robe flowing behind her. She placed her hands on the table and 2 cups appeared, slowly forming out of the crystal surface. At once, a glowing liquid filled them, blue with tiny silver sparks inside. She pushed 1 cup toward Daniel. This is lunar nectar, she explained. It is made from flowers that bloom only under the twin moons. It is safe for humans, sweet, refreshing, and calming. Daniel lifted the cup, a little nervous, but took a sip. The taste surprised him. It was cool, smooth, and sweet, with a faint sparkle on his tongue. It was unlike anything on Earth, but pleasant. It's wonderful, he said honestly. Solara smiled. I am pleased. She lifted her own cup and drank slowly, her silver eyes never leaving his face. For a while they sat in silence, sipping the nectar. The silence was not uncomfortable, but thoughtful. Daniel looked around the room again. Along the walls were shelves filled with books. Not the kind humans used, but tall, thin slabs of crystal with glowing symbols on them. Beside them were paintings, but they looked unusual. The images shifted slowly as if alive. One painting showed Solara herself, standing under the twin moons. Daniel looked closely and noticed something strange. In the painting, Solara looked exactly the same as she did now. Her face, her eyes, her silver hair, all unchanged. Is that you? Daniel asked carefully, pointing to the painting. Solara turned her head and followed his gaze. Yes, she said quietly. That was painted a long time ago. Daniel frowned. But you look exactly the same. Solara's smile was faint, almost unreadable. Time passes differently for my kind. We are not like humans. Daniel felt a chill, though not from the air. How old is that painting? Older than your colony, Solara said simply. Then she looked back at him, her silver eyes calm. Does that trouble you? Daniel hesitated. He felt both curious and uneasy. I don't know, it's unusual. Solara leaned slightly closer. Unusual, yes, but unusual does not always mean dangerous. Her words hung in the air. Daniel nodded slowly, deciding not to press further. For now. Solara began asking questions about Earth. She wanted to know about the oceans, about the sound of waves, about human music, and about how humans celebrated special days. Daniel tried his best to explain, sometimes using small examples, sometimes telling her short stories. She listened carefully as though each word was a gift. In return, she told him about Lunara Prime. She spoke of the glowing plants, how they stored the light of the moons, and how the forest whispered at night. She explained that her people believed the planet itself was alive, guiding those who listened. Daniel asked, Do you mean the planet has a mind? Not in the way humans think, Solara replied. It is more like a great presence. We live with it, not against it. That is why we shape crystals for our homes. That is why we walk under the moons. Her words were strange but fascinating. Daniel found himself leaning forward, wanting to hear more. After a long while, Solara stood and moved toward another shelf. She took one of the crystal books and brought it back. She placed it on the table and it opened by itself, glowing faintly. The symbols inside shifted into shapes Daniel could not understand. This is our history, she explained, but few humans can read it. The language is alive, changing with the reader. One day perhaps I will teach you. Daniel felt honored, though also a little overwhelmed. I'd like that, he said honestly. The evening passed slowly, yet Daniel felt no rush to leave. Solara's house was peaceful, filled with soft light and calm energy. He felt as though time itself moved differently inside. When he finally stood to go, Solara walked with him to the door. She stopped just before he stepped outside. "Daniel," she said quietly, "you are the first human to sit in my home without fear." Daniel blinked, surprised. "Really, why?" "Because of what I am," Solara said simply. "Most settlers hear whispers and turn away. They see me as a shadow, something to avoid." "You came inside." Daniel swallowed, unsure of what to say. Finally, he managed a small smile. "You seem kind to me, and I don't believe in judging someone before I know them." Solara's expression softened. For the first time, Daniel thought he saw something beyond calm, perhaps gratitude, or even hope. "Then perhaps," she said, "you and I will understand each other in ways others cannot." With that, she bowed her head slightly, and Daniel stepped out into the night. The 2 moons shone brightly overhead, casting silver light across the colony. Daniel looked back once at Solara's house, its crystalline walls glowing softly. He felt a strange sense of wonder and unease mixed together. As he walked back to his own home, he realized his life on Lunara Prime was becoming more mysterious than he had ever expected. And deep inside, he knew Solara was not just a neighbor. She was something far more unusual, perhaps even dangerous. Yet he could not deny the quiet trust beginning to grow between them. The days on Lunara Prime began to pass with a calm rhythm for Daniel. He spent his mornings arranging his small home, setting up his desk near the wide window and trying to build a life in the colony. Sometimes he walked to the market where humans and a few alien settlers traded goods. Other times he sat outside and watched the glowing plants light up as the day turned to night. But no matter what he did, his thoughts often drifted back to his unusual neighbor, Solara. Since the evening he had visited her home, Daniel felt something had changed inside him. Solara's words echoed in his mind, especially when she had said he was the first human to sit in her house without fear. Her calm, graceful presence had left a mark on him. He wanted to know more about her, though part of him also felt uneasy. On the 3rd evening, as the moons rose higher in the violet sky, Daniel stepped outside again. The night air was cool and fresh, carrying faint scents from the glowing forest. The colony was quiet, most settlers already inside their homes. But as Daniel looked toward Solara's house, he saw something unusual. Solara was outside, walking slowly under the silver light of the twin moons. Her robe flowed behind her, and her long silver hair glimmered faintly. She did not walk like an ordinary person. Instead, it seemed almost like she was floating. Her steps were silent, graceful, and filled with an energy Daniel could not explain. Curious, Daniel moved closer, though carefully so she would not think he was intruding. From a short distance, he watched. Solara raised her arms slightly and her eyes began to glow with a soft silver light. The plants around her brightened, their glowing petals opening wider as if answering her presence. The air seemed alive, and Daniel felt a strange tingling in his chest, as though he could sense some invisible energy moving between her and the world around her. For a moment, Daniel forgot to breathe. She looked powerful, timeless, and deeply connected to the strange planet. Then Solara turned her head and her glowing eyes met his. Daniel froze, embarrassed to be caught watching, but instead of anger, Solara smiled faintly. She lowered her arms and the glow around her faded slowly. She walked toward him, her steps silent. "You are curious," she said softly when she reached him. Daniel swallowed nervously. I didn't mean to spy." "I was just," Solara raised a hand gently. "Do not be afraid. Curiosity is natural, and perhaps it is time you knew the truth." Daniel looked at her, unsure what she meant. "The truth?" Solara's expression grew calm but serious. She glanced up at the moons, then back at him. "My kind are called Nocturians. We live by drawing energy from light, from plants, and sometimes from other living beings. It is our nature. On your world, humans might call us something else, shadows, watchers, even vampires." The word sent a small shiver through Daniel. He remembered the whispers he had heard before moving here. Stories of strange beings who avoided sunlight, who lived long lives, who fed on others. And yet, standing here with Solara, he did not feel the fear those stories carried. "You're saying," Daniel paused, searching for the right words, "you take energy from others?" Solara nodded slowly. "Yes, but not in the way your stories tell. We do not kill. We do not harm without need. We take carefully in balance. Mostly we live from the energy of moons and plants. But sometimes when we are weak, We must draw a little from other beings, only enough to survive. Daniel's mind raced. And the others in the colony. They know. They suspect, Solara admitted. But fear blinds them. They think of old tales, not of truth. So they avoid me. Daniel studied her face. Her silver eyes were calm, her voice steady. She did not look like a monster. She looked lonely. Why are you telling me this? He asked quietly. Because you came into my house without fear, Solara replied. Because you looked at me not as a shadow but as a neighbor. I wish for you to understand me, even if others do not. Daniel stood in silence for a long moment. His heart pounded, but not from fear, more from the weight of her honesty. Finally he spoke. I don't know what to say. It's a lot to take in. But you haven't harmed me. You've only been kind. That matters more to me than stories. For the first time, Solara's calm expression softened into something deeper, perhaps relief. You are different, Daniel, she said softly. Humans often see only danger in what is strange. You see possibility. Daniel smiled a little, though still uneasy. I guess I try to keep an open mind. Solara looked up at the moons again. You should know one more truth. My people live for centuries. The painting you saw in my home was made long ago. Time has little effect on us. We watch, we endure, while others change around us. That is why I am alone now. Others of my kind live far away. I remain here at the edge of your colony, a shadow in the eyes of humans. Daniel felt a quiet ache in his chest. He could not imagine living so long, watching everyone change while you stayed the same. No wonder she seemed so calm, so distant, and yet so lonely. I'm glad you're my neighbor, Daniel said suddenly, even if you're different. Solara's silver eyes shone softly in the moonlight. Then perhaps you and I will walk together in this world, human and Nocturian, not as strangers but as friends. The words warmed Daniel more than he expected. He nodded firmly. Friends. For a while they stood in silence, looking up at the moons together. The night was peaceful, filled with glowing plants and soft silver light. Daniel felt the unease inside him fade slowly, replaced by quiet wonder. When he returned to his house later that night, Daniel sat by his window and looked out at Solara's glowing home. He thought about her honesty, about the strange energy she had drawn from the moons, and about the loneliness in her voice when she spoke of centuries. He realized something important. Humanity's stories about vampires were filled with fear. But Solara's truth was different. She was not a monster. She was simply another being, with her own struggles and needs, trying to live in peace. And somehow Daniel felt proud that she had chosen to share her secret with him. The next few days, Daniel found himself drawn into a new routine. During the day, he worked on setting up his small garden outside his house. At night, he often saw Solara walking under the moon, sometimes alone, sometimes with him by her side. She taught him how the plants glowed brighter if touched at the right time, and how the forest sang softly when the wind moved through its crystals. Daniel, in turn, told her more about Earth. He spoke of summer evenings, of the sound of rain, and of the way humans celebrated with laughter and music. Solara listened closely, asking questions with real interest. One night as they walked, Daniel asked, "Do you ever wish you could live like humans, shorter lives but filled with change and family?" Solara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Sometimes. But then I remember, if I lived as a human, I would not have met you. I would not see the future you bring to this colony. Every path has its light," Daniel smiled. "That's a good way to see it." In that moment he realized he no longer felt uneasy about her nature. She was different, yes, but difference was not danger. Solara had shown him honesty, and that was enough. Still, deep inside, Daniel wondered what others in the colony would think if they knew the truth. Would they ever accept her as he did? Or would they cling to their fear of legends? The question stayed with him as he looked again at the twin moons shining above. For now, though, he was content. He had a new home, a strange but kind neighbor, and a growing friendship that felt more meaningful than anything he had expected when he left Earth. And as he drifted to sleep that night, Daniel thought to himself, maybe humanity's greatest strength is not in fear of the unknown, but in learning to understand it. Days on Lunara Prime grew longer in a way that felt gentle and timeless. The twin moons hung in the violet sky, casting a silver glow across the glowing forests and the quiet colony streets. Daniel had begun to settle into his new home more comfortably. His mornings were spent tending a small garden outside his house, where he experimented with plants from both Earth and the local world. By evening, he would often find himself walking toward Solara's house, drawn by curiosity and a desire for companionship. Solara had started to greet him with a small smile each night, and slowly their conversations became more relaxed. Daniel learned about her people, the Nocturians, and how they had lived on Lunara Prime for centuries. She shared little stories about the forests, the energy of the moons, and the way the crystals in her home seemed to listen. "You have learned quickly," Solara said one evening, as Daniel carefully touched a glowing plant to make it shine brighter. "I try," Daniel replied with a grin. "Your plants are amazing. I've never seen anything like them on Earth." Solara's eyes glimmered with a soft silver light. "They respond to attention and care just as living beings do." "I am glad you can see it," Daniel laughed quietly. "I think humans often miss the small wonders around them." "And yet," Solara said gently, "you notice them." Their evenings became a rhythm. Daniel would share stories of Earth, about music, laughter, and simple joys like sunlight on the skin. Solara would explain the rhythms of Lunara Prime, how energy flowed through plants, crystals, and even the soil itself. She showed him that the world was alive in ways he had never imagined. One night, Daniel noticed Solara looking at him differently. Her silver eyes seemed softer, less formal than before. She asked him to walk with her under the glowing trees near the forest. The plants emitted a gentle hum, almost like a lullaby, and the moons cast long, dancing shadows across the ground. "Daniel," she began carefully, "I want you to understand something more about my people." He looked at her, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "Yes," Solara paused, then continued. "We live long lives. We see generations rise and fall, colonies come and go. We are observers in a world that moves around us. Most humans fear this. They cannot imagine centuries of watching and waiting." Daniel thought of his own life on Earth, short and fleeting compared to hers. "It must be lonely," he said softly. Solara nodded. "It is. Most of my kind are far from here. I chose this place because it is quiet, but humans rarely approach me. They are afraid, even if only in whispers. You, however, have come without fear. That is why I have shared my truth with you." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of admiration and empathy. "I am glad you trust me," he said, "and I am glad I can understand even a little." Solara's expression softened further. "That is enough. For centuries I have not felt trust in this way. You have given me that." The two walked together in silence for a while, listening to the faint hum of the glowing plants and feeling the gentle pull of the moons. For the first time, Daniel realized that despite her strange nature, despite the stories he had heard, Solara was not a danger. She was a being shaped by centuries, and her kindness was genuine. Over the next days, Daniel tried to return her trust in small ways. He brought small gifts to her home, Earth music recordings, simple bread, and even a tiny lamp that glowed softly like a small star. Solara accepted them with grace, her eyes reflecting appreciation. One evening, she invited him inside her home once again. The glowing crystals shimmered softly as he entered, and the familiar warm air embraced him. "I want to show you something," Solara said, leading him to a section of her house Daniel had never seen. The walls here were taller, the crystal formations more complex. Tiny lights floated in the air like stars, and a faint hum filled the room. "This is a place of energy," Solara explained. "Here my kind draw and share power. It is a gift, but it must be given carefully." Daniel watched, fascinated. "You mean you can share energy?" "Yes," Solara replied. She extended her hand gently toward him. "Some of my energy can be shared with others. It can bring clarity, warmth, even heal minor fatigue, but it must be offered willingly and only a little at a time." Daniel hesitated, unsure, but curiosity and trust pushed him forward. I'd like to try," he said. Solara's hand met his, and for a moment a gentle warmth flowed into his arm. It was soft, comforting, and not frightening. He felt alert, calm, and strangely connected to the house, the plants, and even to Solara herself. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. "Yes, it's amazing. It feels like the world is sharper, brighter, calmer all at once." Solara smiled. "This is how my kind live in harmony with Lunara Prime. We share energy. We respect it. And sometimes we give it to others, not to take, but to help." Daniel felt a new understanding. Solara's kind was not what humans feared. They were not monsters or vampires in the terrible sense of legends. They were ancient beings, careful and respectful, shaped by centuries of observing and understanding the world. That night, as he left her home, Daniel felt a deep sense of friendship forming. He realized that humans often feared what they did not understand, but trust could bridge even centuries of difference. Over the following days, their bond grew stronger. Daniel showed Solara more about human traditions. He taught her simple games from Earth, told her stories of festivals, and even played music recordings. Solara responded with interest, sometimes humming along or asking thoughtful questions. One evening, Daniel brought a small picnic to the glowing forest near her home. They sat together under the twin moons, sharing simple food and sipping glowing nectar Solara had prepared. The forest seemed to hum around them, the energy of the plants pulsing softly. "You bring warmth to this place," Solara said quietly, watching him. Daniel smiled. "I feel it too. You've made me see this planet in a completely new way. I never thought I'd find a friend like you here." Solara's silver eyes reflected the moons above. "And I never thought I would see a human with an open heart in centuries." "You are different, Daniel. You see the world beyond fear." They sat together in quiet companionship, talking softly until the moons reached their highest point. Daniel felt a sense of peace he had not known on Earth. "Do you ever get lonely?" he asked hesitantly. Solara nodded. "Yes. Even after centuries, loneliness is a companion of long life. But it is not always sadness. Sometimes it is the space where hope can grow. You, Daniel, have become part of that hope." Daniel felt a small lump in his throat. "I'm glad. I hope we can continue this friendship. You've taught me more than I expected about this world." Solara reached out, lightly touching his hand. "And you have reminded me that even a long life can hold surprises. Even I can find joy in companionship. You are the first human to bring me this gift." For a long time they sat under the twin moons, their hands close but not pressing. Words were unnecessary. The glowing forest, the soft hum of energy, and the gentle pull of the moons created a quiet world of their own. In the days that followed, Daniel and Solara's bond became evident to the colony. Though some humans still whispered and stared, Daniel's respect for her courage and honesty inspired a few others to approach with curiosity instead of fear. Solara, once isolated at the edge of the settlement, now had a small circle of trust around her, and Daniel understood something vital. Humanity's strength was not only in numbers or technology, but in the ability to build bridges, to see beyond fear, and to form connections even with those vastly different from themselves. At night, when the twin moons rose and cast silver light across the colony, Daniel often thought of Solara. She was not only a neighbor but a teacher, a guide, and a friend. And in the quiet of Lunara Prime, he realized that trust and understanding could form bonds stronger than any legend or story. Their friendship had grown into something rare, a bridge between worlds, a connection between a human and an ancient Nocturian, both learning and teaching in turn. As Daniel drifted to sleep, he whispered to himself, "Maybe this is why I came here, to find a world that surprises me, and a friend I never expected." And somewhere in the glowing forest, Solara stood quietly under the moons, her silver eyes reflecting the glow, feeling the warmth of a bond she had not thought possible in centuries. The colony on Lunara Prime had grown steadily over the months, yet it remained fragile. The settlers relied on energy crystals for their power, and while most were stable, a recent surge in moonlight and the unusual glow from the forests had caused a few crystals to destabilize. Small power outages began affecting parts of the settlement, leaving homes dark and machines quiet. Daniel noticed the concern in the settlers' faces as he walked through the colony. "It's just a small problem," he told himself, "but it could grow if not fixed." He thought immediately of Solara. Her knowledge of energy and the living crystals was far beyond any humans. She could help stabilize the power and protect the colony. But he also knew how humans viewed her. Rumors, fear, and legends about her kind lingered. Approaching her meant stepping into a delicate situation. That evening, Daniel walked toward Solara's home, carrying a small device he had prepared to monitor the unstable crystals. The twin moons shone brightly overhead, silver light falling over the glowing plants and the quiet streets. Solara greeted him at the doorway, her silver eyes reflecting the moon's. "Daniel," she said softly, "you look troubled." "There's a problem with the colony's energy crystals," he explained. "Some of them are unstable. People are starting to worry. I thought maybe you could help." Solara's expression remained calm, but Daniel noticed a spark of concern in her eyes. "It is true," she said. "The crystals have been affected by the unusual glow from the moons. If left alone, small disturbances can grow into larger ones. But I can stabilize them." "With care," Daniel nodded. "I'll help however I can." She stepped aside, inviting him into the glowing interior of her home. The crystals within hummed softly, responding to her presence. Daniel placed the monitoring device on a table, watching as Solara moved among the glowing forms, her hands tracing the energy streams. "This requires focus," she explained. "I will guide the flow, but you must trust the process and stay calm." Daniel nodded, feeling a mix of nervousness and trust. He had seen Solara's abilities before, but witnessing her at work with the colony's energy crystals was extraordinary. She moved gracefully, her fingers brushing the crystals, sending soft pulses of silver light through the room. The air vibrated faintly with energy, gentle yet powerful. Hours passed as Solara worked. Daniel observed, sometimes adjusting the device as she instructed. Slowly, the unstable crystals began to stabilize. Their glow became even and strong, and the faint hum of discord vanished. The colony's power supply returned to normal. Finally, Solara stepped back, her expression calm but satisfied. "It is done," she said softly. "The crystals are stable. The colony will function safely now." Daniel exhaled a long breath he didn't realize he had been holding. You did it," he said, awe in his voice. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Solara smiled faintly. "Sometimes help comes from those who others fear," she said quietly. "It is not the first time my kind has done this. Perhaps it will not be the last." Daniel felt a swell of admiration. She was not a creature to fear, but a guardian in her own right, ancient, wise, and powerful. The next day, the settlers noticed the stability returning. Machines hummed again, lights glowed, and life in the colony resumed smoothly. Word began to spread that the strange Nocturian woman at the edge of the settlement had helped restore the crystals. While some settlers were still wary, others began to approach her with curiosity instead of fear. Daniel walked through the colony during the day, seeing subtle changes. People glanced at Solara's home differently, and a few even waved when they saw her from a distance. The legend of the mysterious vampire-like neighbor was slowly transforming from fear into respect. That evening, Daniel went to her home once more. He brought a small tray of earth pastries he had baked earlier, hoping to offer a friendly gesture. Solara met him at the doorway, her silver eyes bright and soft. "You return," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "I thought you might like these," Daniel said, presenting the pastries. From earth, freshly baked, she accepted them gracefully, her fingers brushing his hand lightly. "Thank you. You continue to bring warmth to this place." They sat together at the low crystal table. The pastries were delicious, but Daniel knew it was the company that mattered most. "I've been thinking," Daniel said slowly, "about what you told me, about your kind, about trust, and about living with Lunara Prime. I think humans can learn a lot from you. Not about power, but about patience and balance, about seeing the world beyond fear." Solara looked at him, her expression calm but deep. "And humans can teach us too," she replied. "About joy, connection, and change. We see centuries, but humans remind us that even a short life can shine brightly." Daniel nodded, feeling the truth in her words. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you. Someone different but kind and wise. And I never thought I would meet a human like you," Solara said softly. "You have given me something I have not felt in centuries. Hope, friendship, and trust." They spent the evening talking quietly, sharing stories, laughter, and small observations about the colony and the world around them. Daniel realized that their bond had grown stronger than he expected. It was no longer just neighborly curiosity. It was a deep connection between two very different beings who understood and respected each other. Over the following weeks, Daniel and Solara continued to work together for the colony. She guided him in tending the energy crystals, teaching him how to feel the subtle flows of energy that connected the land, the plants, and the settlement. Daniel shared human ideas for efficiency, creativity, and small comforts, blending the wisdom of both species. The settlers began to notice a change. Where fear had once colored their glances, curiosity and respect were beginning to take root. They saw that Solara was not a shadow, but a being who cared for the colony and its people. Slowly, stories of fear were replaced by stories of gratitude. One night, as Daniel and Solara walked together under the twin moons, he asked, "Do you ever regret living here, apart from everyone else?" Solara shook her head. "No. Loneliness is part of my life, yes, but so is connection, and now, thanks to you, I see that even humans can bring understanding and trust. It makes life richer." Daniel smiled. "I think that's the real lesson here. Humanity isn't just about survival. It's about trust, understanding, and friendship, even with someone very different." Solara's silver eyes reflected the moons above. "Yes, you have shown me that. Perhaps your species is more remarkable than I first imagined." Daniel laughed softly. "And perhaps yours is too." From that night onward, the bond between Daniel and Solara became a quiet example for the colony. People began to approach her home with curiosity instead of fear. A few even asked her for advice on the local plants and crystals, learning from her wisdom. The stories of the alien vampire became stories of the guardian of Lunara Prime, a being of immense wisdom who worked with humans rather than against them. Daniel understood something profound. Humanity's greatest strength was not in dominating the world, but in forming bonds with others, human or alien, and in building trust even in the face of the unknown. And for Solara, centuries of loneliness began to fade. She had found a companion who respected her, who understood her, and who reminded her that even an ancient being could find friendship and hope. One evening, as they sat together in the forest under the glowing plants, Daniel looked at her and said, "I think this is just the beginning. The colony will grow and we'll all learn more, together." Solara smiled, her silver eyes soft and warm. "Yes, Daniel, together." The twin moons hung above, glowing softly in the violet sky. The plants pulsed gently with light, and the air was filled with the quiet hum of life. In that moment, Daniel and Solara both knew something extraordinary. Despite centuries of difference, despite legends and fear, two beings had built a bond stronger than stories. One of friendship, understanding, and shared hope. And under the moons of Lunara Prime, humanity and the alien vampire lady stood side by side, ready to face the future together, proving that connection and trust could bridge worlds.